Hi everybody, this is Professor West and welcome back to Programming with Java. Last week we did if statements, if-else statements, or actually last time I guess, but as you can see I still have it up here. This time we will be covering switch statements, sometimes called case statements, and you'll see why in just a moment. So the first thing I'm going to do is clear off a bunch of this stuff that we don't need. Okay, as you can see, I took out everything except I went ahead and left the scanner statement because I'm probably going to do an input statement at some point in this program that we're about to do. So, what is a switch statement or a case statement? It's sort of like an if statement that can have more than one value. So, let me start off with a very simple example. I'm going to create a variable called, let's call it month. Why not? And set it equal to 5. Now, to start a switch statement, you use the word switch, and then you put the variable that you want to compare inside of it. In if statements, we would put an entire condition in here. If month equals 1, do this. If month equals 2, do that. But we're not going to do that, because this is not an if statement. This is a switch statement. So you put the first thing you want, whatever you want to compare, and then beneath it, notice I went ahead and put the braces here, because just like everything else, whatever's inside the braces will be part of that. So everything inside these braces will be part of this switch statement. So now I'm going to use the word case, and I'm going to say 1, and I'm going to say let's say system.out.print line quote the month is January. So what's going to happen is the computer's going to, when it gets to this point, it's going to compare month and see if it's a 1, and if so, it's going to output whatever I've told it to output here. And then I'm going to have a break statement, and then I'm going to say case 2 colon, and I'm going to do the same thing. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and do it for all 12 months. So I'm going to pause real quick so I don't run up the time with me just sitting here typing, and you can see the result in a second. Okay, so all I did was continued on with what I was doing here. I have case 1 output statement, this month is January. Case 2, month is February 3. So what the computer's going to do is when it gets to this switch statement, it's going to compare month and see if it matches any of these. If it matches this first one, it's going to do everything after that until it comes to this break statement. So if I had more lines of code, say right here, it would do each of these lines until it came to this break statement. So let's go ahead and run it and show you what happens. And because it's 5, the month is May. Yay! 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. It worked. So, and if I change it and I put a 7 here, and then I run it again, oh, now the month is July. So this is the basics of a switch statement. There's one more thing I would like to point out real quick. We also add a default. At the end, we put default colon. So what happens is, as the code is running, if it tests 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, and nothing is matched yet, then the default will automatically run. It's basically saying everything else. And whatever code you put in, the default will run. So it's important that you remember a couple of things here. The break statement exits the switch statement. So if case 1 runs, and I don't have a break statement here, let's see what happens there. Let's say I want, let's change that to 1 so we can test it. The month is January, the month is February. Why did it do that? Because this is true, so I told you it's going to run every line until it gets to the break statement. It doesn't matter that this line's not true. The same would happen if this was a 2. If I were to run it now, it says the month is February. It skipped this line because this line was false, and from here it assumes every line after that is true until it gets to this break statement. So I need to add my break back in. So how can this help you? In this example, if I were to create some variables, let's call it int, let's call it JAN for January equals 0, int February equals 0, int March equals 0, and I wanted to come through and I wanted to see how many times any particular one runs. January equals Jan plus 1. So this, if January is true, then my variable here would add 1 to it. So if we asked over and over, which we're going to get to loops in the next segment, if we were to put this in a loop and run it over and over and over, we could see how many times January was selected, how many times February. Of course, with just hard coding the day in right here, it wouldn't do any good. We'd have to actually ask the user to input the statement or input the value. But for the purposes of this example, I think you can understand there's a lot more we could do. We could have all sorts of things. I could put an if statement here. Oh, okay, you chose January. Well, if it's, I don't know, before the 12th or whatever the day is, maybe you want to do a horoscope. I don't know exactly offhand the dates for the horoscope. I know it ends somewhere in January and starts the next one. So, for example, if we had also asked, if I'd come up here and said the day, say int day equals, I don't know, 22. Well, I could come down here in my if statement and I could say, okay, well, if the day is less than, I think it's 19 for the Capricorn, then give the horoscope for the Capricorn. If the day is more than 22, or more than 19 rather, then give the horoscope for Aquarius or whatever comes after Capricorn. So, and then I could do the same for each of these others. I mean, this is just one example, but there's a lot of different stuff you could do. But the point is, any code that I put in here will run if case 1 is true, regardless of what it does, just like any code anywhere else, until it gets to this break statement. The break statement tells it to go down to the last line of the switch statement and then continue after that, like right here. So there's a lot of different ways we could switch this up. Let's say instead of just wanting to output the actual day, maybe you wanted to figure out how many days in the month. And let me delete these. So you could say, what's the old saying? 30 days has September, April, June, and November. So you could say case 4 colon case, was it 6 colon case 9 colon and case 11 colon. And then I could say, if I had a variable called number of days, I would say equals 30. And then I would break, and then I could have more. I could say case 1 colon case 3 colon case 5 colon case 7 colon case 8 colon. Notice here I'm putting them all on the same line because it really doesn't matter. Case 10 colon, I could do it however I want. Like here I put on different lines. It doesn't matter. When the computer tests it, if month is 4, then everything after this colon is going to run. So it doesn't matter that there's other case statements here. All of this is going to just assume to be true, and then this line's going to run. Oops. Didn't mean to move it. So the same's true here. I put several of them on this. I think I put 5 of them on this line and then a couple more. Doesn't matter. Number of case. I was supposed to put days. Huh. I accidentally. This brings us to another point. This is the undo button. It undoes whatever you just did. and it can become one of your best friends when you mess stuff up like I just did. And there we go. Now we're back to where we was a moment ago. Now number of days equals 31. And then earlier I had the default only if it wasn't found, but I could save the default for whatever I want. So number of days equals 28. Oops. So in essence, if month is 4, 6, 9, or 11, the number of days would now be 30. If case is 1, 3, 5, 7, 8, or 10, or 12, then number of days would be 31. Oops, forgot to put a space there. And then if not, default would set it to 28. So you'll have to play around with this, like with everything else. It's just depending on what you want to do. But it's just all for fun. See what you can do with it. Have fun. You can do this with grades. Let's say this is another very popular example. Let me get rid of this and I'll show you real quick. Let's say char grade. And well, let's go ahead and set it to something. Let's say B. Let's give them a B for now. And I could say switch grade. Open my parentheses. So then I could say case A. Notice that I'm doing it different. I had it in single quotes because it's a character. With the numbers, I didn't have them in quotes. Now I do. I'm going to say case A, system dot out dot print line great job, exclamation point, you got an A, exclamation point. And don't forget your default, your break statement. So let's do the same thing. I'm just going to copy these lines, Control C, it's my friend, oops. And I'm going to do the same thing for a B. Great job, you got a B. And break. Now right now I've only got it set up for an A or B, but regardless, I think you get the point. So what happens if somebody enters a lowercase a instead of an uppercase? You need to account for that simply by adding it like that. So now if they enter uppercase A or B, or lowercase, it'll work. Let's run it and see. We have already set it to be a B, and it says, great job, you got a B. And if we had made this a lowercase b, then the first one wouldn't be true, but the second one would. And it still comes up and says, great job, you got a B. If we did not have this line of code, it would not understand that this B is the same as this B, because it's not the same. To the computer, those are two completely different things. It doesn't understand that you meant for them to be the same. So here, as I just ran it, you see it didn't find the B, because I used a lowercase b and I only have my test set up for uppercase. So I have to add that back in. So that now it's set up, oops, gonna have a colon. So now it's set up for A or B. And of course you could do C, D, whatever, F, and give them different things to say. But depending on what you're using it for, this is another way that you could possibly use your switch statement or your case statement. And of course it'd be better if you had a statement here that said please enter the grade, and then accepted the grade and then compared it. By default you would probably never have one that actually just said that it was going to be a B, otherwise this wouldn't be valuable to you. But that's okay for the purposes of our example here. You all know how to do the output statement that would ask them to enter it, so by this point, if not, you should go back and check out the second unit of this tutorial. So that's pretty much all there is to switch statements, guys. I know a lot of times they're made out to be this big, huge thing that's so complicated, but as long as you understand the basics here, you can do anything you want with it. And I always try to make it at 15 minutes, and we're just over, so there you go.